My name is Erin Lemons. I work in the University-wide Career Center, and I want to thank IEI for hosting and planning the event today and for our panel members for participating. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see? Thumbs up if you can see the screen. Okay. So quick plug for the Career Center. We are a central resource for all Temple students and alumni, and we provide career development services and recruiting events. Students feel free to schedule an appointment with a career coach, either through Handshake or through our website. So Careers in Color is one of the Career Center's diversity and equity initiatives. We support career readiness for historically underrepresented students through sharing stories at events and panels that address the added challenges faced by people of color, by celebrating BIPOC success in the workplace, and committing to participating with employers who place emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion in their recruitment and hiring practices. So each semester we host a series of events and workshops, and we also have a bi-weekly newsletter focused on career development resources. We provide jobs and internships, events happening at Temple and also in the Philadelphia community. So I will add the subscription link in the chat if you want to subscribe, and you can also follow us on social media. Thank you again today to our guest, and I'll turn it over to Lily.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lily Ruckenstein. I'm the 1810 coordinator for the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute. It's an honor to bring together this group of amazing women who are trailblazing in their industries. We're excited to welcome Lori Bush, a Fox MBA alum and the benefactor of the Lori Hermelin Bush Seed Fund. After completing her MBA, she went on to become president of Nu Skin and the first CEO of Roden & Fields, guiding the skincare company to an annualized run rate of over $1 billion in revenue. She retired in 2016 to Sonoma, California, where she remains involved in corporate board and advisory work, and with her husband owns a vineyard in Gremlin Vines and a restaurant, Oso Sonoma. She has also recently launched a new beauty brand, Solvasa, where she serves as the founder and CEO. Thanks so much for joining us, Lori. And joining us for today's panel are also Camille Bell, the CEO and co-founder of Pound Cake, the award-winning pro-Black, pro-fat, and pro-queer cosmetic company that debuted to the world on September 30th, 2021. Camille is a 2015 graduate from the Klein College of Media and Communication. We're also happy to welcome Emily Kite, the founder and research and development engineer at Ovaria, a company dedicated to transforming women's health with a unique approach to ovarian cancer risk assessment and detection. Motivated by a dual passion for scientific research and helping others, Kite is currently pursuing a PhD at Vanderbilt University. Emily is a 2011 graduate of the Theater, Film, and Media Arts and a 2019 graduate from the College of Engineering. So now that everybody's introduced, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Lori so she can begin the panel.
Well, this will be a fun panel, I think, because I've had the pleasure of meeting both Camille and Emily on several occasions, and both have been the recipients of seed funding from Fox, from Temple. I should say that when I graduated from the Fox School of Business Management, it was not Fox at that point, it was just Temple University, so I go way back. But it's really fun to be here today. So I'm going to jump in with a couple general questions for our small panel today, and then get into a couple specifics for each, because I think there's some really interesting experiences that we can learn from our panelists. So first, I just want to start off with this idea. Lily Tomlin once said that I often wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. And then I realized I was somebody. So you're both clearly somebody, but what did you need to do to convince yourself that your vision has legs and that it was worth investing of yourself? Because what both of you have taken on is a pretty heavy lift. And to the extent that you're doing this so early on in your career, so impressive. but what was it that you needed to do to convince yourself that you could do this and advance your vision to execution? Want to start with Emily?
Sure. How I convinced myself was I failed at so many things in life already. What was one more? And why the vision was worth doing. I just felt like there's a lot of unmet needs in the world, and I can't really address all of them, obviously, but there's some I have personal experience with and a personal perspective that I felt like I could bring to the table. And so I felt like I was uniquely qualified to address two of these things I was interested in.
So just to expand on that a little bit, when you said you failed at so many things, in terms of, I don't think of failure as failure, because you learn, and it becomes the end of something becomes the beginning of something else. What was, can you give me one example of something? Because very few people have are bold enough to even start something and take it from idea to end. So is there one piece of learning from a failure that you would share with those listening today?
Well, I agree with you that I guess failures kind of like a mixed bag. I look at it, when I use the term failure, I guess I mean trying, exploring more so, because to me, there's nothing wrong with failing as long as you're learning and you're, finding a process through that. So one example of failure, the first formula for the hair product for trichotillomania management that I launched on Amazon. I knew there wouldn't be one size fits all formula, but I wasn't sure, how to go about testing. And so essentially launching it was the test. Ideally, I think you would be able to have like, market research and test on different people, but it was hard to, I think to find all those people willing to test it in the same area at the same time. So, but there's a lot of feedback from those reviews, and it was like really difficult to read reviews where it's like, oh, this was just a waste of money, and so I learned that make the formula stronger, because people could probably figure out how much they needed to use. And so, but that was a learning experience. It felt painful at the time, but looking back, I can appreciate it more. And so that's one example that comes to mind.
Oh, I think that's a great example, especially reading negative reviews on a product and having the courage, the strength, and the motivation to rise above that and become better because of it. Camille, what made you realize that you were the somebody who could make your vision happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I can't take all of the credit. I think it was partially my friends and the community that I was in at the time. At that time, this was pre-Fenty, pre-Pat McGrath, pre-Uoma. And I naturally have a personality. I've always had a personality like this since I was a kid, where if my expectations aren't being met, I'm just like, F it, I'll just do it myself. And so I think at that point, there was one particular time when I was in Sephora, I was so fed up and so disappointed because I really wanted this shade, and it like completely went into my skin tone as if I didn't swatch anything. And I was just like, okay, I've had enough. In conjunction with always, I don't know if I can curse, but bitching to my friends, they were like, Camille, just do something about it then. Like, do it. We're all facing the same issue, just do it. And I remember being like, okay, I will. And so, yeah, I think being rejected so many times in the sense of trying on a product, whether it was in Sephora, Ulta, or buying something online, and it looking completely different on me, being fed up with that. And then also my friends at the time, really supporting me. That's what gave me the confidence to be like, okay, I can really take this on myself.
So it was really valuable to you to have others see in you what you really wanted to see in yourself.
Yeah.
The sense I'm getting. I want to follow up on that with my second question, but I'm going to start with you, Camille. And as you're going to realize, I love quotes from people. And this isn't an exact quote, but from the back jacket of Chaos Monkeys, which is a fun book to read. Antonio Garcia Martinez referenced entrepreneurs as people who do experiments with other people's money. So how did you procure the support you needed from others, for instance, the friends who saw this in you, to advance your vision, and the financial support that you needed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think taking out the financial side at first and just the support in general, I mean, a lot of my friends were dealing what I was dealing with. I have friends that are my skin tone, but I have a lot of friends that are a lot darker than me. And so, they were experiencing the same thing, if not worse than what I was experiencing. So I definitely got support from that front. And then financially, I mean, we were participating in pitch competitions, and we were, for the most part, always getting to the final round. This is before we applied for your seed grant. But, we were told, oh, you need to get a prototype, but we didn't have money for a prototype, or it was, well, you need a launch, but we're like, we need money to launch.
Mhm.
And so at that point, we were just like, okay, why don't we go to our own community that is already facing this? We don't have to try and convince them. They're unfortunately used to this experience, and they're going to get it like that. And so that's when in 2017 we planned to do a crowdfund campaign through Indiegogo. And I had met with a lot of people that were successful, and I met with a lot of people that were unsuccessful with their campaign, because I wanted to learn, from the folks that weren't successful, what I can avoid. And we planned an entire year, and we went down to Atlanta, Georgia. There's like this #1 hair show in Atlanta called the Talia Wajid Hair Show. And even though we're not in the hair care business, we knew that a lot of our community would be there. And so I like put $1,000 on my credit card at that time. At that time, I like completely maxed out my credit card. And we went there and we collected as many emails as we could. And then by the end of the year, we were ready to launch our campaign, and we successfully met our goal. And then from there, that's when we first applied to your seed fund. And I think because we were able to show that we had so much traction, we then secured the grant from your program. So we took that funding, and then we finally were able to go to our first lab.
I think the great learning there is that instead of just going to one of these crowdfunding platforms, you primed the pump basically by developing a list effectively of people who would potentially be interested, which is great. And I think that's something that anybody who's listening, who's thinking about looking to fund from a crowdsourcing, it's not as easy as just throwing something up on a website and expecting people to contribute to it. I just really want to quickly go back when you were talking about the friends who were supporting you. Did they support you, not just from a confidence perspective, but were they actually doing some of the groundwork, the work for you? Or was it pretty much just, add a girl, go get them?
Yeah, I think I had, if I could break it up, half of my friends were just like, yeah, you should do it. And were helping me through the hardships of entrepreneurship in general. And then I had another half of friends that were more involved. And so if you go back to our Indiegogo, I think it's still up there. Those were my friends in the video, or one or two of them were my interns, and then the other three in the video were my friends. And so they participated in the video. They would swatch any product that I had. They participated in focus groups. Even and I did receive like a lot of financial support from my friends as well.
Okay, that's good too. That's
Yeah.
what I was really trying to get at. Emily, you've taken on something that is really very, very large in terms of the vision and the cost of executing on something that you're doing. How have you been able to acquire the support that you've needed to advance your vision?
For the ovarian cancer test strip, that support really came from the engineering professors that I was able to talk with. And I applied for the VentureWell program, and I was shortlisted, and they wanted to see community support for this idea because it was more of like a business program. And I made like a petition for change.org, and I got like thousands of signatures to try to show support. And I did talk with one company that was interested in collaborating that made the ELISA test for the same biomarker, but using blood. And I kind of felt like they didn't, I don't know, I just felt like I was this young girl and they were just kind of like, oh yeah, you can kind of like test your stuff at our lab and then we'll see. And it was kind of a situation where I felt like they didn't really, they were kind of just like wanting to get the data and then they would see what they wanted to do. And I would use up all my test strips. So I decided.
Relationship. I'm kind of now almost getting into the question that I had specifically for you, because the kind of thing that you're taking on that does require deep pockets. I think it's interesting that you reference having a university collaboration. So does that mean that you've been also looking for potential research grants and taking an academic route? Or when you have partnered with a company or collaborated with a company, what was that relationship? What did that look like as opposed to being an employee? You were
I haven't been able to partner with the company.
No.
So the only time was when I first got the Be Your Own Boss Bowl funds. I was able to use those funds to give to a company to get hands-on training for lateral flow assay development in their lab. So I was pretty much kind of like an intern that paid them. But at the end, I got to take my test strips with me. And so that was the deal. And so they were really helpful in training me. And I brought those test strips to Vanderbilt so I could do a publication and see if there was more industry interest. I've reached out to a couple companies, haven't heard back. So the other pathway is an academic pathway, like you said, because I can apply for an SBIR, I can apply for I-Corps, which gives you support for a few months to kind of talk to other people in the industry and do face-to-face meetings and travel around and see, do they think your idea is really realistic? So those are things I have kind of planned ahead to look into starting next year.
Have you considered at any point, and that we started talking before the session officially started, that my first product experience from end to end for a commercial product was a diagnostic product, but I did it within a company, even though it was my idea and I really had no budget for it. Nobody stopped me. That's what I always said was the key to my success, is that I was too dumb to know that what I was doing was hard, and that nobody stopped me from working on it. And that turned out to be a terrific experience that really, I think, launched my career in innovation in many ways. Have you considered that more of that entrepreneurial route, working within an organization that has deep pockets? Or are you really seeing an opportunity, and I use the example like, Elizabeth Holmes, but was able to start a very large company with an idea that she was able to pull resources in. I mean, it didn't exactly go as it should have, but
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. I'm definitely interested in doing an entrepreneurial program, especially with this, where it really makes sense to partner with a company, not just for the financial support, but also because a lot of these companies already have data that you can, pair with your tests and, see correlations and make it better. And so really, I think it just would be a great opportunity because it would just optimize the test more, because as like a single person like myself, trying to pitch investors and say, oh, if I just had, $500,000, I still am lacking, some of these like long-term data sets that these companies have. And so to me, it would make more sense to be in some of these specific women's health companies and, work with them. So I've reached out to one. We'll see.
Great. Well, I'm rooting for you. That's it. You're taking on something big and important, and the courage to that's incredible. Camille, the question that I had specifically carved out for you is that having kind of watched your journey for several years now, oftentimes in product development, they say that when it comes to developing a product, there's quality, there's cost, and there's speed to market, and you have to choose two of the three. And from what I've seen, to some extent, the one that you've sacrificed was speed to market, to go for the quality and protecting and perfecting your product, and doing it on a relatively bootstrapped budget. So I'm doing, first of all, if I have that correct, as you reflect on your experience, what are the decisions that you've made that you were most glad that you made? And what would you have done differently knowing what you know now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was thinking about that last night and speaking to my partner about that. I mean, one of the things that I'm really glad and grateful that we did and that I don't regret is that we did not sacrifice the quality of the product. We were, maybe other people would label us as perfectionists, but that's totally fine with me, because when we get the reviews, the fact that we won, to me, which is the number one most prestigious beauty award, the Allure Best of Beauty Award, before we even launched. And then we just found out last Friday we won what would probably be considered the second most prestigious beauty award. That's all validating and shows that thank goodness we didn't sacrifice the quality and exactly what we wanted.
I have to jump in here and say, for everybody listening, and having been in the beauty industry for 30 years, the Allure Best of Beauty Award is a big deal. So that is really great. And also that, that this element of getting a product right. So many companies choose to just go for library formulations from contract manufacturers and put them out there, which is a way to get to market within months after you launch a company. And Camille did not do that.
I did not do that, despite being highly advised to do that. When I was thinking back on, okay, what would I have done differently? my initial thing that I was going to say, and then I talked it through with my partner, but I was initially going to say, perhaps we could have raised funding. Like a lot of my peers that have recently launched, they've raised between $1 and $2 million and then launched their product. But when we review our journey, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And that's actually why we went the crowdfunding route. So I wouldn't have changed that. And I don't know if I would have changed anything, because if we did receive more funding, you know, I would have launched, like, I don't know if I would have gotten the Glossier cohort, right? I don't know if we would have gotten the Laura Best of Beauty Award, because maybe I would have accepted, I don't know, whatever was given to me, because I had millions in funding. I mean, the only feedback, you know, that we think of when we between my partner and I, when we think about it, is in terms of when we go with our next lab, or when we go to formulate our next product, we're now looking for specific things that I just didn't have the knowledge of when working with a lab, you know. So I'm not going to work with a lab that has less than 3 chemists, which is advice we got from Glossier. Because that also contributed to how long it took, is that I was working with labs that were more cost effective, but they're more cost effective because they only have like 1 chemist. So I'm waiting a month to receive a revision. But now I know that, and I'm going to work with a lab that has 3 chemists or more. You know, I'm going to try out their products first. And I'm not going to go with them, but if they can create something that meets my standards, I'm like, okay, then they can help me create the next revolutionary product. And so that's what I am going to do moving forward, I would say.
Great. Okay, well, we're going to want to leave time for questions, but I have one more that I really wanted to get to for both of you, which is, I think, sort of core to what, you know, this month is about and this conference is about. So when I was first approached by Fox to endow the seed fund, it was suggested that it would be focused on female entrepreneurs. And I personally never wanted to be marginalized as a female business person. I just really, you know, always saw myself in the, you know, as an entrepreneur or as a business innovator, but I didn't want to be thought of as a female business innovator. So I was kind of hesitant to really bias the seed fund towards female entrepreneurs. But what convinced me, and in discussions with Fox, with the development group there, is that women have a harder time getting funded generally. And one of the questions that I have for you is, why do you think that is? And what can women do to really navigate what is, whether it's politically correct and we like it or not, a male-dominated world when it comes to financial sponsorship for businesses? So, Emily, why don't we go back to you on this? Your advice to women looking for funding.
There's just, in my area of academia, there's a lot of grants that are trying to kind of nurture women and underrepresented people. So those are good to be aware of, I think. In terms of, like, I guess, talking to men in industry, that was kind of a challenge I faced with the one company. I felt like they didn't really take me that seriously. They looked at me as like, oh, she must be some 22-year-old undergraduate student who just thinks they did something. And that was kind of, it was hard to get them to take me seriously. I mean, I'm still kind of, I look back on that and wonder what I could have done better. If I could have brought someone with me that was if I could have had a partner, would that have helped? And having a partner has been kind of a struggle. I see myself more as an engineer. I don't have the expertise for a lot of business things. I'm very much willing to learn, but I also feel like maybe that's better suited to like, having a partner. So that's kind of why going into a PhD program where you can find small grants for this project or that project and trying to develop new technologies is an avenue I've pursued.
Camille, your business, both of the businesses are female focused businesses. Let me stick with Emily for a second here. Do you think that their businesses, in the case of the nature of the business, that was an issue, or that they weren't connecting to the product or the idea that you were pitching or seeing the need for it? Or do you think it was more related to a gender cultural issue between you and the potential investors? Understand the question? Yeah. Was it the nature of the business, or was it you as the entrepreneur?
I'm not sure exactly what would have made it all work out better. I felt like maybe they didn't appreciate that the pregnancy test, which is, a test women are very familiar with using, I took a lot of inspiration from. And I don't know if they really appreciated that part of the product in that way. And I don't know if it was also because they thought I was younger than I actually am. I'm 33. I think they thought I was 22. And so
did you pitch to any women's investment groups at all?
I have not. I've tried to send an email to one company that was focused on women's health and ovarian cancer specifically. So I'm hopeful to hear back. But I am interested in exploring kind of any avenue that would kind of get this technology into a pathway forward.
Camille, you've had quite a bit of success in terms of getting support. Were you finding that success coming more from did you find yourself in front of male investors or female investors more often? And was there kind of a difference in your experiences based on, that gender culture relationship?
To answer the question, I feel like I think in the beginning of our journey, we were put in front of more men. And we weren't really getting anywhere. And that's when we went to our own community. But it was interesting because at the time, one of the biggest grants that we had received was from the CEO of QuickBooks. So like on our Indiegogo, I think at the time we were pro-Black, pro-fat. And at this point, this was 2017, but we're pro-transgender, and that doesn't even make sense, which is why we say pro-queer. But it was a white guy from Silicon Valley, the CEO of QuickBooks, who was like, oh my God. He like reached out and was like, I love that. I love what you guys stand for. Here's $10,000 and gave us a grant. So, I mean, and California is usually more progressive, like in terms of their thoughts and whatnot. But I feel like on this other half of our journey, now that we're post-launch, we've been getting, and being Glossier, we've been put in front of a lot of women investors. And so it's been 50-50 throughout our journey.
I think we could do a whole session on working with investors or pitching. And I mean, there are a whole ecosystem set up around this. But I have found also that sometimes, what female investors, how they'll approach something is put you through a lot more work for a lot less money in some cases than male investors will. And I think a lot of it may have to do just the way, brains are wired in terms of risk taking, conservative nature, the kind of the hierarchy of things. Anyway, since we're getting, into this in time, I think it's probably a good time to open up for some questions from others for you. Is it Lily? Are you going to field the questions, or Lindsay?
Sure, I can field the questions. Does anybody have any that they want to ask? Oh. Taylor?
Hi, everyone. This question I actually had for Camille. I wanted to know, when you started your business, did you start building a team, or did you start creating a team like over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for that. I started building a team afterwards. So initially it was just me. And Emily, I'm curious if you got this advice, but I would say like maybe 7 months into my entrepreneurial journey, I was advised to get a partner. And so yeah, I got a partner. But initially it was just me doing everything. Yeah.
How did you go about getting the partner? What did that?
I mean, he's my boyfriend, so it's not really like it's not yeah, it like some of my peers like in the Glossier cohort who have who do have partners, they either went through a program like an accelerator and maybe meshed with someone else in our cohort. Both women worked at Google, and so they met each other, became friends, and started their business that way. So I mean, I may have would have done it like that, participate in accelerator, maybe someone that I vibe with, maybe that's how I would have found my partner.
Emily, have you had any experience with partners in crime?
I also have kind of similar to Camille. When I did the hair products, my boyfriend and me were kind of trying to get through the logistics of selling on Amazon together. And then for the ovarian cancer one, that's kind of just been my own thing, since it's such a long pathway to get to market. It's just been kind of a soul endeavor in trying to figure out how to. I mean, there was a time I was encouraged to get a partner. I would love a partner, but it's kind of like a soulmate. You can't just find someone off the street. There's so many things to agree on, for the vision and how you want to, do certain things. And even if, you're easy to work with, it's still hard to find people that kind of want to dedicate the time and have the passion for the project.
I can tell you from firsthand experiences, partners can be the most amazing journey that you take with somebody, or with with your top team, a small group. But when partnerships go bad, it can be really devastating to a business. So ensuring that you go into a partnership up front with understanding, and sometimes where we hate to think about it, but with negotiating what a dissolution of that partnership might look like up front is something most of us never want to do. Just like a marriage, you don't want to, go in with, thinking about what happens if the marriage falls apart. But I, personally, but more through some of my business cohorts and things, seeing some of the heartbreak associated with partnerships. So definitely, I think, entrepreneurship is a team sport, but it can also be a very lonely world as well. And it's interesting, just hearing the insights of others who have been there. Lily, do we have some more questions?
Yes, we have one in the chat from Greg Fegley. Entrepreneurs are often very critical of themselves and don't like to trumpet their successes. I'd like to know, what is something that you're most proud of achieving so far on your journey?
Camille, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I would say probably the Allure Best of Beauty Award. And then I can't say the other one because it's under embargo till the 28th, but it's also another major one, but definitely Allure because I remember back in 2017 when we were planning for Indiegogo, and my partner was like, oh my gosh, what if we won an Allure Best of Beauty Award? What if we got it before we even launched? And I was like, okay, like, let's bring it back to reality. I was like, I think that's a good 3 to 5 year plan when we've been in the industry for some time and we can, work up towards that goal. But yeah. And then the fact that, I mean, he always to this day, he's like, what did I tell you? Because we not only won it, but we won it before we launched, like he said. And that's just, I'm very proud. And then I would also say probably getting into the Glossier cohort. We've always referenced Glossier, like in terms of like their strong branding. I would have them up on our board when we're talking about our brand and marketing. And the fact that we, they had over 10,000 applicants and we were picked one of 16. And we didn't know anyone. There are some people in the cohort that either worked at Glossier or knew people at Glossier. We didn't, and I know I asked you, Lori, like, do you know anyone? Because I was really trying to get in, but it felt amazing because now I have long-lasting friendships with other like-minded entrepreneurs as well. And so I'm grateful for that.
Emily, your proudest moment?
I was really proud when my paper on the ovarian cancer risk test was published in Nature Scientific Reports. And I was proud when I was able to get a patent on it because 2 or 3 years ago, all male attorneys told me that it's not patentable. And so I was like, oh, well, I can still, make this test and go forward. But then once I was closer to publishing, Vanderbilt attorneys were like, oh no, this is definitely publishable or patentable, and we're definitely going to patent it. And so I was proud to be named the first named inventor on the patent. So I'm also proud of the hair product helping people. Even though I don't sell it anymore, when that happened, I had a whole lot of emails like, where to go? I need this. This was so great and so useful. And I was like, okay, well, maybe it's something I'll circle back to one day. So those are some proud moments for me.
I think what's interesting is that your journey is starting to position you as a thought leader in a particular area of business. And I've always thought of that as being a really interesting way to more or less launch yourself and open doors, is being a go-to thought leader. Takes time to develop that equity, that personal brand equity or that professional brand equity. But clearly that's something that you're on your path to, that I think is we're going to be hearing a lot more from you. If I can just add, a response that something that we really haven't spoken about a lot in terms of starting a business or starting a company. But I think the thing that I was proudest about in terms of building what, went from 0 to a billion in revenue in the very, very early days, which were my favorite parts of the business, was creating a culture around the very small startup team, and having that culture that we just really rigorously protected as the company started to grow, and really paid attention to the culture around the mission. That was that I would say, is to me something that is, I think, more a source of pride than the revenue or the awards. In many ways, is really being able to create something that meant something in people's lives who were part of the journey. Additional questions?
Our next question is from Taylor Sanders in the chat. It's for both panelists. What was the best thing you learned from the accelerator programs and or mentor programs you participated in that you didn't know before?
I'll let either of you determine who wants to just jump in and answer. Or maybe I'll put you on the spot. Camille, why don't you start on this one?
I guess the most recent one that I've participated in has been Glossier. And I would say two things. One is more generalized. With the Glossier cohort, it was their first time doing it, and they're on their second cohort now, but we were the first. And so when there's the first of anything, sometimes it's not as streamlined. And, speaking to some folks, they may not have felt like they got out what they wanted. But I think for my partner and I, one thing we learned early on was things aren't always going to be handed to you. And so if you want something, to go get it. And so, once we understood that early on, we were able to make things happen, get what we wanted. We were like, hey, who's your manufacturer for your boxes? We want these celebrities to be wearing our product. Who do I need to speak to in Glossier to make that happen? Oh, here's this person that handles that. We want to be in this press. Who handles your press? And just not being afraid to ask for what you want. And so that's what I learned from like a generalized. And then more specifically, I'm learning from one thing that I did take away is, which I thought was very interesting from the cohort, is when we launched, we were like, we want to sell out. And the Glossier execs were like, that may sound great, but you don't want to do that. And here's why: because the day that you don't have product, you're losing money. And so we did sell out. We didn't have product for a month and a half. And so that's one thing that I took, because I thought that was very interesting, that they taught us, was you should always make sure that you have enough inventory so you're not always selling out. And so those are like two things that I learned.
Emily.
The only program I've been in is the Temple Incubator Accelerator for the BYOVB winners. And it was really great. I really enjoyed kind of having a little cohort of community members, of people, all kind of starting from scratch or hitting the ground running. So I really like looking back on that time. So I really recommend getting involved that way. And I guess one thing looking back on is that there was a lot of people who had a lot of advice. And it was hard to navigate like which advice to take for your unique situation. Like the attorney we talked to was from that incubator. I went to his office in Philadelphia, and he showed me like a huge stack of people who tried the Panelist for ovarian cancer and it didn't work. And I was convinced. I was like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't, go down this road. But then, years later, now I have a patent for it. I don't know. So you never know, I guess, what's going to happen. But I always feel like the feedback's really useful. So if I didn't have that meeting of them, being really thorough, being like, this isn't going to happen this way. So that did kind of inform my next steps for optimizing the tests. What does a test need to be patentable? So there's always something you take away from conversations, even if it's not really the answer you wanted to hear. And so that's really important. And with the hair product, I felt like I had to move fast, but I felt like also, even though I sold all the product on off Amazon, I felt like I didn't build the time that I needed to kind of, I guess, grow. And so it was really difficult trying to figure out, should I keep going or do I need to change this? And how do I carry this forward? Because it did help people, but it's also hard to make a product that is supposed to, has limitations. It's not going to cure you. And so there's a lot of things I felt like maybe I should have spent more time on in the beginning. But, hindsight's always 2020. And so that's, I guess, everyone probably will have that experience. Like, oh, I should have done it this way. So
one thing I would suggest, and I'm sure everybody is already doing this and thinking about it, but back in the day when I was getting going in business, we didn't have these things called podcasts. And I find I get so many just ideas or different perspectives and hearing people's stories on podcasts. And there are so many great ones out there when it comes to entrepreneurship and stuff. And, pretty much every day, take a walk with my dogs and listen to a podcast. And it's really an incredible opportunity to just kind of get that experience without having to be accepted into an incubator program somewhere.
Lori, what podcast do you like?
Oh gosh. And I've actually had the opportunity to do some podcasts, which are fun as well. But Masters of Scale is one I like to listen to. I love Freakonomics. And Freakonomics Book Club has become one of my favorites. Of course, Revisionist History with Malcolm Gladwell. I'm a big Malcolm Gladwell fan. I also read a lot of books and blogs, and I really love the kind of things that Guy Kawasaki talks about. He's kind of known as the garage entrepreneur. And I was actually interviewed for a book called, I think the name is weird, but it's a good book. It's called, it's Aligning the Dots, not Connecting the Dots. But it's a book about how in business, especially if you're taking money from investors, making sure that you have precision alignment between the vision, who your customer is, who your team is, who your investors are. And when I was helping him edit his book, and the quid pro quo is I knew that he knew Guy Kawasaki. So I wanted to have a one-on-one session with Guy Kawasaki as a result of, helping him out. So I've had an opportunity to do that. I'm trying to think of some of the others. EO 360, which is Entrepreneur Organization 360, is one that I've enjoyed. Gosh, and I just get and I'm starting to listen to some more that are a little more politically skewed these days, because I'm finding that politics is entering into and political beliefs are impacting business in some interesting ways these days, which is really interesting to understand and navigate, and even getting ready for this. So do you have any that you recommend, Emily?
I listen to all types of podcasts because I will have to be pipetting for like an hour straight. So I listen to podcasts covering all sorts of things. I also listen to politics, but the news. I like How I Built This as well.
That's a good one too. I like that one also. inside outside innovation is also pretty interesting because they're short. They do like 20-minute sessions with entrepreneurs, and oftentimes they're trying to extract one sort of aha moment or insight. So one of the things that I've gotten out of that podcast in the past is this idea of a recursive strategy, which was one of the things I was actually thinking about with you, Emily, is you start off with a great big vision, and then you realize that, you know, from here to there is fraught with a lot of landmines and cost and risk. But in the process of it, you find you know, kind of a smaller business that can start you on that path to building and growing something that ultimately takes you towards, you know, it's part of the roadmap, but actually building a business around some of the milestones is kind of an interesting approach to getting to a big idea. Actually, I had a friend of mine who's been a very successful entrepreneur, in fact, a shark on Shark Tank in South Africa, started this idea of wanting to mobilize voting in government elections in the US and other countries. And then he kind of stepped back and thought about mobilizing proxy voting for companies, because working at the government and level was, you know, just had so many barriers and hurdles associated with it. But ultimately what he realized is that the most important part of all of this was identity verification, and was able to start what has become one of the major companies around identity verification on mobile devices. And that went into all kinds of interesting places, including working with Anheuser-Busch to sell beer from vending machines. So as you know, as examples of all the different things you could do once you can do that. So it was kind of an interesting place to start off with this big vision that he is still working towards, but with other businesses that have spun off as a result of it. Does anybody else want to float any questions out while we're still on?
I just wanted to say thank you all so much for coming. It was fun to plan this, and you know, I think the Lori Bush Fund is one of the most impactful things we do here at the IEI, and the gratitude that I feel from the winners, because you know, I make their award letters and communicate with them, is very real, and it means a lot to hear you guys talk about, you know, the perseverance that you've exemplified, and you know, when people try and tell you that you can't do something and yet you do it anyway, you know, it's inspiring. So thank you guys.
Well, I think it's interesting that we've had Camille, whose friends were telling her, you can do this. And we've had Emily rising above people telling her she can't do it. So, you know, we come in all shapes and colors and visions, and we all navigate our path. It's definitely not a one size fits all, but it's really rewarding to be part of an organization like this and watching the journey of the people who are at the beginning of their journeys as opposed to me at the end.
I mean, I remember Camille doing a presentation in 503D in Alter Hall about her Indiegogo.
Okay.
And I also remember her coming to Ellen and I and saying, I took the money, I did R&D at a company in Arizona, I feel like it was, or something, and the product came back and you were so disappointed. And I just remember kind of your like feeling of defeat. So when Ellen and I saw you launch and get Allure, I mean, it was like just a really heartwarming like moment for us. And I have vivid memories of a text message picture from Emily when she was in California at that lab with a picture of 2, you know, urine sticks that she had proved her concept and the technology worked. And I'm literally getting goosebumps talking about it because I started here at the IEI right around when y'all started your journeys as well. So, I mean, Emily, this very shy girl who did not want to present in the idea competition with
Yeah.
Pro-Beer, with Pro-Beer, she was in a hat. She would not really talk to anyone, and it was like pulling teeth to try and engage with her. So it is, also Camille has never been shy, so that was never a worry for me. But just being on this journey with y'all has been a very rewarding part of my life, and it is why I do what I do and give so much to my job every day, because it is people like the two of you who it is awesome to see.